Hi YouTube, this is Evie. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today I would like to talk about how to make more time for BDSM, and in particular, how to make more time for your BDSM relationship. This goes for people who are in long-running 24/7 total power exchange dynamics, all the way to people who are in brand new bedroom-only BDSM relationships. All of them are equally valid, and I hope that whoever you are and whatever perspective you're coming from, you're going to be able to get some hints, tips, and tricks on this video on how to be able to make more time for the things that make you feel so alive and that you're so passionate about. I was actually asking for questions on Tumblr and Instagram in order to do a Q&A with my sir, Mr. Tex. And I think one of the most liked questions I got was, how do I make more time to be submissive? How do I make more time for my relationship? How do I make time to go to dungeons, etc., etc., etc.? And this was something that pretty much everybody commented on, saying, yes, this is something that I want to know more about, this is something I'm struggling with. And I really just want to applaud people who are recognizing that this is an issue for their relationship, that they're realizing that they're not currently being fulfilled, that something is missing, and that they want the ability to make more time to make this relationship better, or to make their dynamic stronger, or just reinvigorate the feeling of being in BDSM. And I totally get it. I myself very much struggle with finding time for things. I'm very busy. Obviously, I have a vanilla job. I do YouTube. I have a Patreon I have to manage. I do a podcast. I also struggle with being able to make time for BDSM. I sometimes joke that I spend more time talking about it than I do actually doing it. Now, that isn't necessarily the case, but I do understand where a lot of people's struggles are coming from. A lot of us do have a lot of obligations on our time. We're working 60 hours a week. We're juggling school and work. Maybe you have childcare obligations. Maybe you are in the middle of a big life transition. Maybe you're taking care of elderly parents. All sorts of different things can get in the way of being able to make time for hobbies and passions, and especially for nurturing and growing our relationships. It's very easy to get stuck in a rut and to not make progress in one's relationships and not make time for the things that we're passionate about. A lot of us will instinctively prioritize the things that we need in order to live, i.e. keep food on the table, a roof over our heads, stay in education or employment, and just do those things. And when you are working 60, 80 hours a week, or however long it happens to be, and your entire day from 6 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. is consumed with previous obligations and work, it's very difficult to have time, let alone the energy, in order to engage in BDSM, no matter how passionate you are about it and no matter how much you care about your partner. So what I'm going to be going over in this video is how to find that time, how to make time in all of this busyness and craziness that we have in order to go back to the things that actually make us feel fulfilled. Because life isn't always about just getting through it. Life is not about spending your whole day working and not actually getting to do the things that make you feel fulfilled. Now, I'm not trying to say that vanilla work or that going to school or education or anything like that is not something that you can be passionate about. I think it's great when people are passionate about their jobs or the career that they're going to have when they get out of school, or what they're learning. I think that's great, and I really encourage that. I think that especially these days, more and more of us are realizing that doing something we're passionate about is a lot better than something we will make a lot of money off of. But that doesn't mean that we don't let other things fall by the wayside. Again, it's that priority list. So my first recommendation to people is to figure out exactly what your schedule looks like. This is something that is key to all time management, is figuring out what you estimate something will take you versus how long it actually takes you. So for example, you could estimate that it takes you 15 minutes to take a shower every morning, but maybe it really takes you more like 20 or 25, depending on how reluctant you are to actually get out of that lovely warm water when it's 20 degrees outside. Totally get it. That's basically my life story. And maybe you estimate it takes you 30 minutes to make dinner, but most days it really takes you more like an hour. It's all about finding out where your expectations don't meet reality and where you have free time to be able to use for other things. So basically what you'll do is you'll get out a calendar, a piece of paper, whatever. You can use something that's physical. You can use something on your phone, like a note app or a calendar app or something along those lines. I personally use Google Calendar. And you figure out exactly what your daily schedule looks like. I would do this for at least a week, if not longer, because that will give you the most data to figure out what a typical week for you is going to look like and what a typical day for you will look like, because hey, we all have variations at our schedule day to day, and the different things that we do on different days changes. And you just write down as your day is going along, how long it takes you to do certain things, how long you are in a certain place that's not with your partner or not in a place where you can engage in the things that you're doing. And I would have both you and your partner do this if you happen to be in a relationship. Obviously, this is very much applicable to people who just want to make more time for BDSM in general. And you'll sit down and you'll compare your lists and you'll figure out exactly where you have overlaps in time and maybe where you could be a little bit more efficient in your time. Are you willing to maybe do food prep during the week in order to have more time to have time together in the evening so you don't have to cook every day? Are you willing to compromise on chores so you're not the one who's constantly having to do all the chores during the week? That's also something that's really important in this, is figuring out if time obligations are maybe a bit wonky, and that is why there is a lack of ability to connect in a BDSM sense, because if one person is doing all the chores and errands and the other person isn't doing any at all, the other person's like, why don't we ever have time? And the other person's like, well, I'm so gosh dang busy, I don't get into bed until like midnight and I wake up 4 hours later, so of course I don't have time to do BDSM. You'll figure out, okay, do we need to change priorities? Do we have time for certain things? And you just figure out where those overlaps are. It may only be 30 minutes or an hour, and that's totally okay. The important part is that you figured out what time you do have, and from there you need to figure out how you want to manage that time. A lot of us, especially after a long day in the office, don't really want to consciously think about everything that we're doing, because heck, we've just been doing that for the last 12 hours. And we just veg out, we're on our phones, we watch TV, we just spend time doing whatever, and suddenly the whole day is gone and you're asleep and you're doing the same thing you were the day before again. Being conscious of your time is the next key point. Now that you figured out you have the time, you got to figure out how you want to use it. Now, I'm not saying that you need to fill every single individual 30-minute increment that you have with BDSM, but it is a possibility. If maybe you do only have 30 minutes from the time you get home until you are preparing dinner, can you do that in a more mindful, more submissive, or a more dominant way? Do you want to make your after dinner dessert your playtime? Do you want to maybe skip out on watching your favorite show once a week that you have to keep up on TV and watch it later recorded on DVR when you get to have more mindful BDSM time with your partner? Those are the kind of decisions that you need to make. You also need to outline what specifically your goals are and what you want to use that time for specifically. Do you want to have more time for submissive training? Is there a particular kind of play that you're lacking or a headspace that you want to spend more time in? Do you want to do scenes in general? Do you want to have time to provide service? Do you want to have just general DS time? And is this going to be something where you're going to have solo time to do it? Is it going to be something where maybe you're going to want to be able to go out to a dungeon or a local munch or meet other kinky people or go on dates or whatever it happens to be? You need to figure out exactly how you want to spend that time and if you have time to do it. Now, when you go through all of this and you figure out how to use your 30-minute increments or an hour, you may find that you just feel like you're going to be way too exhausted to do anything that's too active, like an intensive training scene or a full-on BDSM scene, and that's okay. That's why you're doing this exercise, is to figure out what your capacity level is at. That doesn't mean you don't have time to do anything BDSM related at all. Even if you only have 15 minutes every night before you go to bed, there are ways to make that a DS experience that can enhance your relationship. I'd recommend something like meditating. So maybe your dominant has you meditate for 10 minutes or 5 minutes or however long you're able to do it, meditating on something that reflects your power exchange dynamic. Either something that they pick or something that you pick that really gets to center you and make you feel submissive. Maybe you wear a collar before you go to bed and you wear the collar to bed. Maybe they chain you to the bed. Maybe they have you read for 30 minutes a BDSM related novel, an erotica, something that is BDSM oriented that again will help get you in that particular headspace. Maybe you will provide service and maybe you will be the one to take them an evening coffee or dessert. Maybe you will kneel before them as they are getting ready for bed. Maybe you will sleep on the dog bed once a week next to the bed as opposed to on it. There's so many different things that you can do depending on, again, what you want to get out of your relationship and what the focus of your BDSM relationship is. Because really, especially if you are in more of a 24/7 dynamic, it's not so much about the individual scenes as it is creating the overall overarching element and feeling of the relationship that it's something that's DS based. And having that 15 minutes can be even more powerful for creating the feeling of being submissive or of being dominant than something that is a scene. You don't need to do full scenes in order to still be able to get that DS that you need oftentimes to feel like you are being true to yourself and that your relationship is growing and being enhanced. Something that's great as well that you can do if you're running low on time is to have protocol around dialogue and how you speak to each other throughout the day. Now, this does sort of depend on your natural communication style, but especially if you are the sort of person to be in constant communication with your partner all of the time, it's really great to have things that you can establish to constantly have a DS vibe either the whole day or maybe when you wake up or go to bed. There's a few different things you can do here. One, if you're the submissive person, I would maybe see about speaking in the third person to your partner or only addressing them by their title, sir, master, daddy, etc., that you would want to use for them when you speak in text. Now, this is something, again, that is a little bit more along the 24/7 lines, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. You may decide you only do it some days a week or before you're going to do a scene or whatever works for you. But for me, what I do, and this is something that is absolutely fantastic and that has made my DS so much better because I do only get to see my partner once a week. So it's not like we really even get to have a lot of DS time because we don't live together. So what we do is I speak in the third person and I refer to him as sir in our conversations. Now, a lot of times I will slip in, and especially if I'm in work mode, and I will use I statements, but the general rule, the general protocol that we have is that I will speak in the third person and that I refer to him as sir. And especially referring to him as sir on a daily basis for like a year and a half plus now, I think of him as sir. Our relationship is the power exchange relationship, as well as all the other things that we do together, but I think of him as my sir. He isn't Mr. Tex, who is sir sometimes when we're in the bedroom. He is sir all the time because of the natural style of our communication. And if you're a pet or a little, you can also bring in some elements of speech and speech patterns to signal to your partner when you're feeling more submissive, when you're in headspace, or when you just want to be able to go more in that territory and reinforce that element of your dynamic. So a lot of times I will type out things that sort of, this is so embarrassing to talk about, but I will type out things like dog sentence, like if you guys know like the dog poetry meme, like I'll type sentences out like that, or I will respond with like woof or woo, or like different things to kind of signal my mood, and just that's naturally how I communicate with my sir at this point. Like that is my natural response to his text messages, is being able to respond as his pet, because that is how he sees me and that is how I see myself. So it makes sense, and it's just a very natural way for all the days of the week that we can't see each other to maintain that constant DS contact. And now, if being able to speak in the third person all the time seems a bit difficult, or being able to call your partner sir all the time also seems a bit difficult to remember, or it's just not what works for you in your relationship, you can just have it set up to be specific times. So maybe you'll have a rule or a protocol where you have to text them every morning and every night using a certain form of address to remind yourself of the consistency of your BDSM relationship. So maybe even if you talk to them the whole day, just going by, normal, average, everyday communication styles, at night you always say, "Good night, Daddy," and you give him a little emoji or whatever, you're blowing him a kiss. Or maybe you wake up in the morning and say, "Good morning, owner," or something along those lines. And again, you can also kind of weave in your own personal communication of how you feel, if you're feeling little or like a pet or slave-like or whatever it happens to be. Weave all that stuff together, and then you instantly have reminders at the beginning and the end of the day that will frame your mind for the rest of the day and frame how you sleep and how you relax in the evening from that point forward. So that's one thing you can do as well. Now, my final suggestion is going to be for long-term planning. Now, I know a lot of us like to have BDSM scenes and like to have dynamics that are free-flowing and just come and go in the moment. Well, if that was working and you were getting what you wanted, you wouldn't be here, would you? You wouldn't have the fears and the struggles of being able to make time for your relationship. So you're gonna have to plan stuff out in advance. Now, I know for some of you, especially those of you who are juggling school with work, you may not even know what your work schedule is going to be week to week, so it may be a bit difficult, but assumably you have at least one day off at some point in the future every couple of months. And as soon as you know what that free time is, as soon as you know when you're going to have a day off, and maybe that is 2 weeks or 3 weeks or, the next day or however it is, set aside that time as early as you can for a scene. Now, this isn't something that's going to work for everybody because a lot of people have trouble kind of forcing the headspace on, and if you're planning on doing a scene for a month and the day arrives and then you're not able to get into the headspace you need to be in, that's okay. You're just going to talk about it, work through it, maybe replan or reschedule the type of scene that you're going to be doing. But if you don't make time for it and you don't plan for it, it's not going to happen. So you might as well bet on it being a possibility as opposed to not allowing it to happen at all because you haven't set aside that time. And when you're really busy, it's easy to kind of look at your day off and say, oh, I'm going to be free. Then suddenly you spend the whole day doing errands and binge watching Netflix and having a moment to relax. So it's really, really important that as soon as you realize you have time off, you schedule it, you go to your partner and say, hey, I have a day off next Friday, or I'm going to be taking a vacation day next Friday. Do we want to plan a scene together? And you set that aside as soon as you can. This is also really great if you want to be able to reserve a whole weekend. Most of us who are in office environments rather than being in school still will have more flexibility around the weekends. You'll usually have 2 days a week where you get to do whatever the heck you want. And maybe you already have a lot of obligations in the foreseeable future. Maybe you have birthday parties you're supposed to go to. Maybe you have family members to go see, work travel planned, whatever. Well, if you're gonna have Saturday and Sunday for the next forever, as long as you have this job, even if you need to plan it 2 weeks out, set aside a whole day and be like, this is the BDSM day. Saturday, April, whatever, is going to be BDSM day. We're gonna be doing something awesome that day, and take time to plan it. Take time to make that day special. Spend the whole day, if you can, doing things that are reinforcing the relationship, doing things that are making you feel fulfilled in BDSM. And that is the best advice I can give you. If you don't have time anywhere else in your everyday schedule, plan something out as far in advance as you can and make it as regular as possible too. So if you're doing something, you have an hour free on Thursday evenings, make that hour the BDSM hour every Thursday. Maybe you have a Saturday that's free every couple of months. Okay, make every third Saturday BDSM night. So that way you have something that's consistent. You have something that you can plan on, and you're not just floundering around wondering when you're going to have time because, hey, you've already reserved it. So if you need to work overtime or whatever, heck, they're going to have to go find somebody else because you've got stuff planned. And going along with this, you can also set aside an entire weekend or a long weekend even to have a full BDSM DS weekend. You put away the phones, you put away the computers, you put away all of your other obligations, and you say, okay, boss, in 6 months, I'm going to be taking off 1 day of vacation and I'm going on a trip with my girlfriend and it's going to be awesome. And they say, cool, make sure you get all your work done before then. And then the weekend comes and then you get to have an entire weekend that is BDSM focused, that is about your dynamic. And some people, a lot of people especially that are in situations where they have children, that weekend that they have every 3 months, every 6 months where they get to do BDSM things is it. And that's okay. You can also mix and match these, and maybe you do a little bit every day, but then your big scenes are only once a month, or maybe you focus everything on just going to BDSM conventions whenever you can. And if you find that works for you, awesome. Obviously, reevaluate periodically, figure out where your schedule is at, and figure out if there's ways that you can make openings in your schedules, reduce obligations in other areas, reassign chores, things like that. And of course, a lot of this will depend on the specific nature of your BDSM dynamic, and maybe some renegotiation will be involved. And lastly, I think it is also important to realize when you have bitten off more than your schedule will currently allow for. If you really want to have a 24/7 total power exchange dynamic where you're doing intense scenes every day, but you're working 80 hours a week, that may not be great for you. And if you are somebody who wants to progress into that, then you're going to need to make room in your schedule in order to be able to develop the relationship skills that are necessary to be in that level of relationship. So I think it's really also about understanding where your schedule is at and where your desires for BDSM is at, because you could really, really want to do something and have time enough to do everything, but a lot of us don't have that luxury, and it's just about figuring out what you can do as opposed to always what you wish you could do, and just getting to that as close as you possibly can under your particular circumstances. Alright, that is pretty much everything I wanted to cover today. Hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave a comment down in the comment section below. If you guys want to see more from me, if you haven't already, please do subscribe. I make videos twice a week. And as well, I would highly recommend you check out my Patreon. I have a ton of exclusive perks, chats, rewards, videos, stuff like that to check out. Link will be down in the description box. And until I see you guys next time, have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.